And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Kamala Harris. Thank you for listening. Hello, Cleo.
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
Well, all right, yeah. Today's a bit epic, isn't it? It feels epic, does it, to you?
Yeah, it does. This is like a whole new world for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels really important somehow.
Do you know what? It shouldn't be really, because we've done both the Obamas before, so we
That's
should
true.
know a bit about the American politics.
Yeah, but it's hanging in the balance right now.
Yes, we're on the cusp of history yet again. It just feels like we're living through history every week at the moment. The world is crazy.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so American election is coming up, and we have just read Kamala Harris's autobiography. And you know what? You know, I always end up talking to people all week about what we're reading.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how many British people don't even know who she is.
Really?
No joke. They're like, who? Kamala Harris, you know, she's running against Trump for president. Oh, right. Oh, blimey. I know I don't really watch the news, but even I know that.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's interesting that people just don't know. It's weird because I spend a lot of time in America and like the news is just relentless over here. It's such a different culture to news in the UK that you just can't get away from it. Whereas in the UK, if you don't watch the news bulletins or necessarily go on social media, you can kind of ignore the world, really.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
But you can't in America. It's just relentless.
It's given a huge amount of importance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very important.
And the thing is, I've just reading her book, it's just like, wow, every single thing she believes in is the exact opposite of her opponent. I've never known anything like it. So I'm like, God, this is me being biased. Good versus evil is how I can't help but think it. It just seems like that.
Yeah, and that's how it's kind of played out in the mass media, really. And it's so entirely divisive. What I've just said about news in America, I think that's why it's so in your face, is because both sides are really aggressive and it's a constant battle 24/7.
And it goes on so long, doesn't it, in America? I mean, it's years. They have to campaign for like 2 years or something, do they?
Yeah.
The thing is, it was Biden versus Trump for a long time, and Kamala Harris has only just stepped in, hasn't she, relatively speaking?
Yeah, so she has a much shorter period of people getting to know her.
Yes, that's right, and that's probably why some people don't.
Yeah, and she's doing very well. Well, I've got to be honest. Okay, let's be honest. I ask you this every week, but let's be honest about this. How much did you actually know about Kamala Harris before you read this book?
I didn't know anything. I knew she was vice president, but I paid her absolutely no attention. And then I knew she got, stepped up to running for president. And that's it. I don't even know where she's from. I didn't know her background, nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's because she's kind of been foisted upon us at short notice.
Yeah.
All of a sudden she's... I mean, who cares about the vice president, really?
Yeah.
Historically, we don't care about the vice president. I mean, name me the last 3 vice presidents.
Well, it's weird because I can name you one, and that's Joe Biden.
Right.
So, I mean, he was vice president and then became president.
Mm-hmm.
So they have set a precedence for presidents. They have. She is well qualified. I didn't know either, but I mean, of course she is. She wasn't vice president by accident.
Yeah. I mean, she's a career politician.
I was going to say, I was reading this thinking, why is it I can handle American politics, but I would be so depressed if I had to read about a British politician? Because it's not our country. I feel like I can get involved a bit more because you know how it's just so depressing sometimes when it's your own country?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And when it's not...
You feel like there's less at stake reading about politics in a country which ultimately governs the world and can protect our tiny little island in the World War III.
Yes. Please.
I mean, really, when you consider life and death, maybe the American election is more important to Brits than the British election.
Yeah, I know, it might be. But also, I guess it's just a bit more colourful because it's not somebody who just went to Eton.
Yeah.
It's like different. It's different worlds. So you're learning more about people's lives that you didn't know.
Yeah, and of course they just have the whole thing of Trump in the running, who was essentially a celebrity. It's a real culture clash. I think these two running for presidency now, I think, is the biggest culture clash we've ever seen, battling against each other, which has made it such a fight which people on both sides are so entirely passionate about. But I've really loved getting to know Kamala, actually, because I knew very little about her. I've always been kind of impressed with what I've seen. I mean, she talks to my politics more than Trump does. But I'm so opposed to this culture of division that we have that I try not to hate Trump too much.
Do you? Anyway, we should talk about the book.
Oh, we should get into it. I forget that we got to start the podcast. Come on. Kamala. So it's Kamala, right?
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because she actually writes in her book, Kamala. Like comma, like when you have a grammatical comma.
Punctuation.
But in the English accent, that's comma. But in an American accent, it's probably karma. So it's probably karma then.
Kamala.
Yeah. But I've been going Kamala all week, like a proper English person.
Because I have always, because like seeing it written down, I just say Kamala.
Yeah, me too. That's what I have been saying. We said Barack Obama for 8 years, and that's not right. It's Barack.
Barack.
Yeah. But we said Barack for 8 years. It's just rude.
It's very rude to get somebody's name wrong.
I think so.
Do you know what, actually, talking of names, do you notice how Kamala is called Kamala by her first name, whereas Trump is Trump?
Oh, yeah.
Historically, all presidents are known by their surname.
Oh, yeah.
But all of a sudden, we have this woman, and she's called Kamala. We don't call her Harris.
She's accessible. She's human.
Well, it might be because she's a woman, actually.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone past me that we're calling Kamala, where we should actually be calling her Harris. Like, it just seems there's almost a bit of a lack of respect from the media because they call her Kamala, but they call Donald Trump.
Good point.
Anyway, her name is Kamala Devi Harris.
Yes. Born in 1964 in Oakland, California. Have you noticed how they're getting younger or we're getting older? Because how can we be nearly the same age as the president?
No, we're not nearly the same age as her. I like the fact that she's 60 this year because there is a respectable period of time between our ages, which does make me think that within the next decade, I could achieve enough in my life to become president of the United States. Whereas when you hear about Celine Dion being like 2 years older than us, you kind of think, I can never achieve that in 2 years. You can dream.
Do you know, it's a great age to become president because she's young enough to have a lot of energy. She's going to need it. But she's old enough and has worked her life long enough to build up all the intelligence she needs, all the information she needs to do a great job. Oh no, I'm totally, obviously, on one side and not the other. I'm trying to not be biased. It's difficult.
I know. No, it's going to be hard not to be biased.
Yeah.
When I've read this book, I'm so impressed with her. But, I give Trump the benefit of the doubt because I refuse to be influenced by social media, mass media, etc. And so I kind of, in the reverse of that, I've read this book that Kamala Harris has written herself. And she does sound amazing, but I kind of, I've read it with an open mind and stuff. But I don't know, she just is bloody amazing, isn't she?
Isn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, she kind of is.
Mustn't get too excited. I say to myself, don't get too excited because they always let you down. Even the ones that seem amazing will should do something like arm Israel or something. You'll be like, oh no.
Well, she has.
Exactly. And people can't always be exactly who you want them to be. And so I can't get too excited.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, she's a politician and they're all corrupt in their own way.
Yeah, they are in some way or another. You can't be a saint and be a president. You can't. I don't think.
It's just if we're going to have a corrupt politician, I'd rather that they shared some of my politics than not.
Yeah, and some really decent human values.
Really decent human values whilst being totally corrupt.
Yes.
So where are we? Have we actually started talking about this woman
Let's talk about this woman. She was born from a dad who was Jamaican. He was born in Jamaica anyway. I looked him up separately. She doesn't talk much about him. He was born in 1938. Well, her mum's pure Indian. Mm-hmm. I didn't even know that. I did not know her heritage at all. Her dad's called Donald Harris and her mum was called Shyamala Gopalan.
Yeah.
And they both came to America to get an education. They're both brilliant minds, a pair of them.
Yeah, they really are very intelligent and motivated. And I mean, her mum was 19. And
yeah, it was. She'd already graduated from the University of Delhi at 19. She's when most people go to university. She's a genius.
Yeah, and then at 19, she came over to America, which would have been a big deal in the 1950s. and just left everything behind. She wouldn't know anyone.
Yeah, and her parents, they were really cool people too, because her mum used to be a community organiser who really looked after abused women, and her grandfather was part of winning India's independence. So political, community, that's her background, and then she got into science.
Yeah, but for the grandmother to have been doing all of that woman's rights stuff in India in the 40s and 50s and educating them about contraception and stuff, I mean, Kamala's grandmother is a forceful, intelligent, proactive woman. That was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
And then her granny and granddad then went off to Zambia after it gained independence to help settle the refugees. So they're real politically, socially minded people. That's her grandparents. Then her mother, at the age of 19, comes over to America and she gains a doctorate in nutrition and endocrinology. And then she ends up working and researching breast cancer.
Dedicated her whole life to trying to cure breast cancer.
This is Kamala's mum.
And to trying to stop racism and to fight for civil rights. And, they got involved in every good cause, her parents. She was in rallies for this and that, protests and stuff, since she was in a pram.
Oh, yeah, anti-Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's amazing, really.
It is.
Yeah.
And her parents separated when she was 5, but her dad went and took a job at University of Wisconsin, and he ended up teaching at Stanford. Yeah, I mean, that's her background.
Yeah, I mean, what a heritage, what an ancestry to come from. That's your immediate ancestors, your mum and dad and your grandmother and grandfather.
Yeah.
Really are making social change, and that's what Kamala did. I mean, these people have potentially spawned the first female president of the United States of America. That's incredible.
I really like it when her mum says, she was a little kid and she kept fussing about and stuff. So her mum just goes, "What do you want?" Because she's been to so many protests and she's used to hearing that. She went, "Freedom." It's actually what she's used to hearing as a response to that. "What do you want?" "Freedom." "When do you want it?" "Now." Yes, not a normal child.
We generally read showbiz books.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like sometimes it's so obvious how that person became famous because they had people in the arts in their family and stuff that inspired them.
Yeah, right.
This is the political version of that.
Yes, it is.
It's like this amazing, dynamic, politically and socially motivated woman. Literally, that's who her parents are. That's who her grandparents are.
Yeah.
They've created in the same way that celebrity families create other celebrities. This family is absolutely made this remarkable young woman who's going to change the world.
Yeah, it's their industry. Yeah. I tell you what, she doesn't actually tell you too much personal stuff.
No.
She's very careful.
Yeah, she is.
With what she gives us. She talks a lot about her community and things that sort of helped her grow up in an amazing environment, like that place that had visitors like Maya Angelou and
the Rainbow Sign,
Alice Walker. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's this woman called Mrs. Shelton who kind of part brought her up. She is really community minded because she grew up in a community like that.
That's right. She did.
Also, the first school, her elementary school, it was only the second school where they practiced desegregation.
Yeah, it was an experiment.
That's really on the cusp of history, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Do you know what I've recently found out? Schools today in America are no further desegregated than they were 50 years ago.
Really?
Isn't that incredible?
Wow. Yeah.
So no progress has been made.
Great.
In the last 50 years.
That was good to know. Yeah, then her mum moved to Canada, and she makes it very clear that she wanted to go home and she knew where her home was.
Yeah, she hated it.
So I think just in case anyone tries to accuse her of being half Canadian, she's making it very clear that her loyalty is with America.
Yeah.
That's what I got from that.
Well, she was 12 years old when that happened, and she was totally uprooted, away from her friends. She's in California, so it's nice and sunny. Her mum takes her to Montreal, which is freezing with snow, and people are talking French and listening to Celine Dion.
Yeah. Or were they? I don't know if she'd conquered Montreal. It was just Quebec. Yeah.
Anyway, she might have left Montreal before Celine Dion started. I don't know why this is an important part in Kamala's life, but we have just read Celine Dion's book, so it's fresh in my head.
Yes.
So her mum finishes the job in Canada and then they come back to America.
I mean, all right, when she got back, she sort of worked out that politics is where she wanted to be, but it's more like, it was more community. She knew she wanted to make changes. To make changes, she had to get into law. And it's exactly the same route that Obama took, because you can't change things unless you change the law. Well, it's the most effective way of getting in at the root. And so that's the way she went.
I find this amazing that, again, this is something that must have been instilled in her from a young age. It's just, it wouldn't even occur to me, even now as an adult, wouldn't even occur to me that I could get a law changed.
Yeah, right.
That I could do that I could get that going and I can
make a difference. Yeah.
This young woman already realizes, you know, if there's an injustice, well, I don't just have to rail against the injustice. I can actually go and get the law changed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think that was a possibility.
Yeah, right. But she's only grown up knowing those things. You can make a difference. Amazing.
And so off she goes to Howard University, which is historically a black university, right?
Yeah, she said everyone looked like me and it was heaven. And everybody was young, gifted and black. That's what they were ingrained in them. And everyone was told that they can make it. You know, they were just given loads and loads of confidence.
Yeah, while she's at Howard University, she does an internship with the Senator of California. And like 30 years later, she is the Senator of California.
Yes, yes. In a way, her whole life is training to be the president, isn't it? Everything she's ever learned, you can apply to running a country. Every time she steps up a notch, that next level, to learn about that, to change that. And then you're like, well, now I need to get up there so I can change that and make that better.
She was a bright student and she was doing this internship, and then they offered her the position at the end of it as a deputy district attorney. So she's really on an upward trajectory as a young woman. And then her exams came and she failed them.
I know.
I was really surprised when that happened in the book, because I was just like, this woman is just up, up, up and away. And then she fails her exam, so she can't become the deputy district attorney.
No, not yet.
But they like her there. She's got a job in the district attorney's office and they keep her on for another year and they allow her, they give her time to continue her studies, and she retakes the exam. And she did pass on the second attempt.
Yeah.
And so she was sworn in as an officer of the court, and here she is.
Yeah.
She's a legal eagle, ready to start prosecuting.
Yeah, exactly. She spent 8 years in the Alameda County District being a criminal prosecutor, and she was, oh God, it's harsh what she ended up doing.
So she started off doing the petty thefts and the DUIs and stuff, but she was really working her way up through like the hierarchy of the court and stuff. And then eventually, as she was getting success in these smaller cases, they'd start giving her like the harder cases of violent crime and stuff. So she was there for almost 10 years. And then she kind of got headhunted to the San Francisco DA's office. But she'd heard it was quite dysfunctional. But she was going to be working with the victims of sexual crimes and serial offenders and stuff. So it was promotion. And I guess this is a woman who's been in Alameda for nearly 10 years and she wants to move up. So she goes to San Francisco where, she's really in at the deep end, and it is a really difficult office to work in. So she's there for a year and a half, and then the San Francisco city attorney, who happens to be a woman, and she was the first woman, Louise Wren, to hold that position, offered Kamala a job. She was going to lead the division that handled the child and family services, which is children who are victims of sexual trafficking, being sexually exploited. Do you watch Law and Order Special Victims Unit?
No.
I love it. It's a big deal in America with Mariska Hargitay. When I read that Kamala Harris had this job where she'd be getting phone calls in the middle of the night to go out and bust sexual trafficking gangs and stuff like that, it is exactly what this character does, and she's so cool.
Oh, really?
And I had no idea that Kamala Harris was actually this person in real life, or somebody like her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, if this book was just about this woman who busted all of this sexual exploitation of kids in the foster system immigrant kids and juvenile detention, I would think that was an entirely impressive life story all by itself. But this is just one small section of this woman's life.
It's a step on our journey. I know she knows about all walks of life. She actually knows about people from the ground up rather than people born into privilege, who are often the people in history who have ended up leading the country.
Yeah.
She knows it from the bottom up.
I've really thought about this a lot lately, especially because of the way the English political system works. The reason it is mainly those white people with privilege holding those positions is because it was white people with privilege who set those systems up in the first place. So, of course, it favours them.
Of course, yeah.
And it's much harder for people from minorities and stuff to break through. And it takes a real determined person to do that. But the more you think of it, if you want somebody fair in charge, it's never going to be a white privileged person because they look after their own.
Yeah.
And they know all of the laws and things that were set up and how to exploit them. If you want a fairer society for the common man, as it were, you need somebody from a minority because they're going to level it out, you know. But of course, white privileged people don't want that, which is why they do everything they can to keep it the way it is.
They don't obviously have to be from a minority. There must be exceptions.
I think the people that are exceptions, if they're white and have privilege, I think they go off. I think they probably do more humanitarian ventures rather than they're not drawn to the self-serving, narcissistic, power-crazed world of politics.
Maybe.
I don't know. Name me the last white privileged head of state that you genuinely respected and liked.
Name one.
Yeah.
I can't. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
Even the ones I've loved always let me down.
Yeah, of course.
Or that I thought there was hope. I'm really beaten down by it.
Yeah, I know.
By the whole system, I think.
I think it's deliberate that they want you to feel beaten down by it.
Really?
It's like beating you into submission, you know?
Yeah. But you can still vote for someone who's better than someone else.
Yeah.
And at least that gets you ahead a bit.
So, you know, one of the things that Kamala discovers whilst working with these children, those kids will offend, the kids that are abused will offend and end up in the adult criminal system.
Yeah.
So she's really thinking about policies that would stop that from happening.
Yes.
And she actually develops a team of people that would study all of the issues and situations around sexually exploited youth. And she put a group together and they started working on a series of recommendations that would change the law in San Francisco. I mean, she really is at this stage, you know, making things happen and fostering change. Oh, God, I'm so impressed with this woman. She's brilliant.
Me too. There's a couple of times when I've actually was reading this when I felt like weeping. Because she's saying everything you just long to hear somebody say who might be running your country. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my God, can this be real? Can I even have hope now?
Well,
you know?
Yeah, no, you can. But it's just, you know what, we know the way the world works. And I don't think it pays to get too excited about anything these days.
I don't either. Yeah, I felt like that all the way through it, honestly. And then I Googled it and read up on it and I tried to calm down and remember that everyone lets you down in the end.
Yeah.
It hurts a lot less when you remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, so she sees a problem, like all these sex crimes, homicide. Then she, instead of just going, we must punish these people, we must lock them up, she goes, let's look into why this is happening. Let's look at society and work out if we can get to the core of it. Can we change it? Maybe the abusers are abused. Maybe we can offer them help. Maybe instead of locking up somebody who's a drug addict, maybe we could offer them some medical support. You know, if you can't get kids to go to school, maybe we could set up some support for them so that those parents can get to work because they're running 5 jobs each or whatever. Maybe we can help. Her whole ethic is to build people up and help them instead of crush them and punish them. That's the essence of where she's coming from. She's just so healthy.
She's treating people as humans, isn't she? And she's not writing off criminals.
Humanitarian. Yeah, it's just great.
You know, I'm so impressed with this truancy thing because she focused on truancy at elementary school, right? Which for anybody in England, that's like a primary school age. And her contemporaries were saying to her, why are you focusing on such a young demographic. And she said, well, that's the age that you learn to read. So 6 and 7-year-olds, she's hot on their truancy. Because if you don't learn to read, you're way more likely to do less well at school or drop out of school. And then people who drop out of school are way more likely to turn to a life of crime. And so she really went after the 6 and 7-year-olds, which people didn't understand. But it's because she has a long-term view. She's really thinking long-term about how to heal society for generations to come. Honestly, she just, the way her brain works, the way she solves problems, I'm so impressed with her. And you know, this is just like one of many, many different areas. She does so much.
She basically breaks this book into chapters and goes through each problem, like prison, housing, truancy, drugs. You know, says this is the problem, this is what we need to do to fix it. That's the essence of this book, actually.
Yeah, she's so well-rounded, isn't she? Like, she really has something to say about every pressing issue of modern life and society.
Yeah.
And it's because, you know what, it's because she absolutely has lived it and she has that experience. And do you know what, I watched the presidential debate a couple of weeks ago between Trump and Kamala.
I did as well.
And all of Trump's supporters afterwards were like saying, oh, Kamala was given the questions beforehand. She was tipped off. And it's just kind of like, no. In a presidential debate, you know what you're going to be asked, but you could ask her anything and she can answer it because she has a lifetime of experience in those fields.
And that's amazing that they say that. That proves that they think that she was much more together.
No, it does. A lot of the time when they run her down, it's just a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
It's like saying she's good at her job. They were also saying that she had an earpiece with Obama on the other end of the earpiece.
Yeah, that's how good she is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
Really. Anyway, we've got to talk about her life because this is an autobiography podcast. Not a political debate podcast. So what happens to her life?
So she's at San Francisco, figuring out all of the new policies and structures which can help people who have been abused, you know, have a better life and not end up in the criminal system. But she realized quite quickly that in order to put in a new structure and create new systems, she had to run for office and get more power herself in order to put all of these things through. So she started a political campaign with an ironing board in her local supermarket car park.
Yeah, it's so grassroots, literally. Yeah. She's setting up her ironing board, putting her flyers on it, and just talking to people so that you find out what they care about. And it's the best way to actually find out what people need in society.
You know, she does so much. I don't understand how she gets all this done. She's now running for office whilst doing her really high-powered job. Do you know what? Lots of people help her, don't they? Like she says in this book that her family and her friends, they all rally around. It's like so many people believe in her. It's amazing. But do you know what? She pays that back because it's like she believes in everyone else. She totally believes in people in society. Like when she worked with all those people who came out of prison and got them back on track. I mean, that's amazing. Most people wouldn't have bothered.
She actually set up this amazing thing called Back on Track, didn't she? To actually try to get kids back on track by firstly admit where their crimes were wrong and then working through them. She had this whole programme, and at the end of it, if you go through this whole programme, your criminal record is wiped clean. And that's your incentive. And then you can go back into society because she's saying, you know, criminalising people is just destroying their future. And that's a problem. And then they're not contributing because they can't. So it's all that sort of thing. She sees the problem and then she comes up with a really great solution. And then she works her arse off to actually implement it and make it happen. That's her whole life's work. That's the pattern, isn't it? That's what she does.
Yeah, and it's better for the taxpayer dollar as well because the Back on Track program costs about $5,000 per person.
Yeah.
And if they continue to reoffend, prosecuting them costs about $10,000 and then it's $40,000 to keep somebody in jail for a year.
Yeah.
So she's really, just from a financial point of view, for the state and the budget. So it wins on all fronts, you know?
Yeah.
She's rehabilitating people and saving a whole bunch of money in the process.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking about this as well. And, you know, when you get an alternative person in the White House, of course, prisons are being privatized and stuff and people are profiting from them. So that actually there's an incentive there to keep people going to prison now.
Yeah.
because friends of powerful people are making lots of money by keeping people in prison.
Yeah.
So
I realised that. I think progressive is the word they use for her. She's progressive. But also, with all these immigration policies under the previous Republican government, I've learned all this through her, that they were going to shut down borders. Then what they did is just throw everyone in prison, split up the families. It is abuse, humanitarian total crisis that this is being done on American soil. It's shocking.
Do you know that whole thing about separating children from their families at the border? That was first done, I think, as a deterrent.
Yeah.
Like Donald Trump would say, don't make the journey. If you make the journey, we're going to take your kids away from you. So it was kind of done as a deterrent. But the fact they actually did it, and then the shocking realization through this book that no proper records were made about what children belonged to who and where they were. And some of the families were only reunited after they'd done DNA tests to prove they were the same family. That is disgraceful that ever happened.
I know it is. But it's also what's deterrent? Like if you're in a gang warfare zone in Guatemala or El Salvador, you're not going to have heard Trump say that.
Exactly. And plus it probably is still a safer option than what you're fleeing from anyway.
Exactly. Oh my God. I have to say as well, she's got this whole section on how she says words matter, which is really, really cool. And I started finally realising that she says many times, like, a black man is going to get 20% longer jail term than a white man who's done the same crime. It's that sort of thing. There's loads of stuff like that all through this book in many different ways, like hospital treatment, everything. And she says, after investigation, we've discovered that it's to do with implicit bias. After I read the bit about the importance of words, I thought, oh my God, she's saying that's racism. But what she's doing is explaining what racism is and saying you've got an unconscious implicit bias. Instead of throwing that word racism around and scaring people, you're almost gently saying you've got an unconscious implicit bias. We need to educate you all on how to get rid of that so that you see all the people the same, so that you don't make these terrible judgments. Oh my God, that's what that word means.
Yeah, we all have it, don't we? Because we all largely, I guess, grew up in white communities or black communities or Asian communities or whatever. It's just,
I agree.
It's a really good way of framing it.
It is, isn't it?
Because people get so defensive if you say they're racist.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and it's just deconstructing it and making people aware of it. I'd love to know if that has been successful in the police force, actually.
Yeah, so she did it in the police force.
I guess it's too early to even say it.
And it just scares people less, especially if you are of some mixed heritage, to not stand there on that podium and call people racist, to actually use that phrase. It's just breaking it down. It's so clever. It's really good. It's really helpful and productive moving forward, as people always say.
It's like that thing, how often women have to not give men a straight answer. They kind of have to say, well, actually, if you think about it this way. And
so it doesn't upset anyone.
It's kind of like she's having to do that. It's almost not fair in a way. Like Donald Trump could just say it one way and we all have to accept it because he's a white man.
Yeah.
Where she has to really, really think hard about how to present something so she doesn't alienate.
She has to be cleverer with words. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like her job, like if she becomes president, her road to getting there was 20 times harder than Donald Trump's would have been.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He never had to do anything grassroots, did he?
No, not
he
at all.
He went straight to to the arena tour, like Wham did in the 1980s.
Yeah. That's right, yeah. He skipped out the whole process of being a politician. Because guess what? He isn't one. He's a businessman.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, the housing crisis, which really broke down in the end of 2007 to 8. It was really interesting reading about that. Essentially, banks scamming people and giving them loans when they couldn't possibly pay them back, and then raising the interest rates and making it so impossible that they were foreclosing. It was like this big scam to foreclose on as many people as possible and take their houses and make massive profit. And it was totally illegal. And these were the biggest banks, and she took them on. And again, she says, I couldn't take on the banks unless I became... What did she do? Oh, she had to become the California Attorney General in order to take on the banks and fight. So she fought to become Attorney General and then took on the banks.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. This is the Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo. Like, she really does describe the fight. And she's actually in rooms with these people and they're being patronising, going, oh, I think your voters would be very happy for you if you just accepted our offer. And she's like, do I need to remind you that this is a law enforcement action? And they're like, oh, shit, we can't just pussyfoot around this woman. She means business. She's serious and she's going to smash them. And she turns down 2 to 4 billion in damage that they'd offered. This is people becoming homeless. This is people's lives destroyed.
I mean, she calls it a human tragedy. It was 2.5 million people went into foreclosure. That's devastating.
It's totally criminal. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievably criminal. It really is.
Yeah.
She eventually got on the phone and had a row with this man, and she said her people were like, that could have gone one way or the other.
Yes.
But it did it, and then she got 20 billion in the end instead of 2.
I know, incredible. She doesn't back down.
Yeah.
In the face of huge diversity. I mean, how much power was in that room? She was in there with like the CEOs of not just one bank, but many banks.
You know, they're all men as well.
Yeah, men. And she's sitting there and she's not backing down.
She held her own.
I would go so far as saying that's actually quite a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I tell you what, though, she knows the law. It's such a good place to come from. So you actually know what's right and wrong.
And having integrity, actually, not being swayed, because a certain other major politician, i.e. Donald Trump, would have sided with the banks. He'd have done the deal.
Oh, yeah, because it's money first and humanity doesn't even factor in.
And Kamala really is for the people, isn't she?
Yeah.
And this is before this is like something she's doing while she's Attorney General of California. This isn't some grand gesture she's doing in her quest to become president.
To get votes or something. No, she's doing it because it's what she believes in.
She's doing, and because it's right.
Yes. And then, the last chapter is about the Supreme Court, where she's talking about how I remember this happening on the news, where there's 9 justices of the Supreme Court and their jobs for life. And when this one judge had stepped down, it wasn't so long ago, this Judge Brett Kavanaugh was put forward by the last Republican administration. And he is a bad man. He's hostile to civil rights, voting rights, reproductive rights. Basically, he's racist, sexist, and he got appointed. And so now you try and pass something. This is why they're so scuppered.
Yeah.
I think. I might be wrong. But when they try and pass laws, they have to go through the Supreme Court and they get stopped all the time. And so they can't always do whatever they want to do. And that is right. That's why you have a constitution. But it's so frustrating, when you want to change things. Mind you, okay, Obama put through Obamacare because there's another whole chapter on medical care. And the Democrats' thing generally is really to try to get much fairer medicine and access for poorer people and just for everybody. And the Republicans block it. And as soon as they got back in, they shut down Obamacare. They withdrew help for people to enrol for medical care. They just made life so difficult for people without a lot of money, essentially, didn't they?
It's so weird. When Trump got in after Obama, it was just like he wasn't even seeing sense in something like Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. It was just like he just wanted to undo everything that Obama did, regardless.
Yeah, just so he left no legacy.
Just being a Brit and having the NHS, it's just such a different culture over here. People become bankrupt when they become ill because they can't afford their medical bills. I mean, it's criminal.
Oh, no. Watch what you're saying, though, because ours is getting phased out.
Oh, shut up. I blame America for this because our politicians totally look to America. They see how much money is being made from the American medical system. And they're going to come back and they're going to screw us all. And they're going to charge us so much money for drugs and prescriptions and medicines. They'll be pushing fentanyl on us. And
which is 50 times stronger than heroin.
Yeah, it sounds ace.
And that was approved
Well, the thing that shocked me in this book, I know I'm very aware of the opioid crisis in America through prescription painkillers, but the thing that really shocked me is that heroin sales went up 80% because once people are hooked on opioids, it's actually easier and cheaper to get a hold of heroin than it is to get a repeat prescription. Right. I mean, that's shocking.
I'm upset because that's what killed Prince, of course. He was on painkillers for his hip, and that was fentanyl, and that's what killed him. And it really goes into how easy it is to die of it because the dosage is just so delicate because it's way too strong for any one person to ever take. It's absolutely terrible. Oh my God. Okay, one of the worst things I think in this book is that in Obama's time he brought in this program that was trying to encourage people to become legal. Children of immigrants who'd only ever known America, if they have no permits, they're going to walk around their whole lives not being able to basically contribute to society because they're not legal. And so it was almost like an amnesty, where you can hand your guns in and don't get, it's like that. It was Deferred Actions for Childhood Arrivals, it was called. And they filled in a lot of forms, gave out all their information. It was all top secret and private. And they would then get permits, right? And they would be legal and they could go to school and they could become Americans. And when the Republican government came in after Obama, she was going to have meetings with them saying, you cannot use that information. Please, will you promise you won't legally? And they didn't. And then suddenly there were tons of arrests. I think they said undocumented immigrants with no criminal record were 50% more arrests of them and 37% more arrests of immigrants generally. So they were totally using that data to trap people because they'd in good faith signed up to Obama's system. And it's just so sad and depressing. It's just things going backwards, but worse than they were before. It's just so crap.
Oh, they're just ruthless. They're just ruthless in getting the biggest gains for themselves, and people are collateral damage.
Yeah.
And especially for foreigners, they mean nothing to these people.
No.
And not that actually the people of America do, to be quite honest with you. It's like the Conservatives in England. I think they're so alienated from real people that they don't see them as humans.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that people adore Trump, and I don't think he'd piss on them if they were on fire.
No, I know, I don't understand it, because he's doing nothing for them. He doesn't care about them. It's crazy.
Well, he tells them he does stuff for them. I tell you, the one thing he's saying at the moment that I think is really going to swing it for him is that he's saying that if you work overtime and if you get tips in your job, I'm not going to tax them. For people that literally live week to week, down to the last dollar for groceries and gas, that soundbite is going to go a long way with them. I tell you what, the one thing that man needs to do to transform America is to tax his billionaire friends and the corporations. It's the same thing that happens in the UK, but he's never going to because, they fund him and they fund him because he's not going to ever tax them. And, they're withholding so much money from the average, everyday, hardworking. It's criminal that a nurse or a fireman or anybody who works 40 hours a week pays more tax than people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and all those billionaires, all the corporations. And you know what? They're withholding all of that money, and they point at the immigrants and they say, look at those people. They're the problem of this country. This is what's ruining the economy. Actually, it's not. It's all of your rich friends. And if that money went back into the public purse, there'd be money enough for everyone. And I get why people vote for him, because he does have some good policies like not taxing the overtime and the tips. That's a brilliant thing that working class people will vote for. But where are the plans in place? The thing is I just feel that Kamala has a much more checkable work history. Like, if I'm going to be really objective and have an open mind about it, if you just want to look through their past working history and their CVs, they've both done a lot of stuff in the arena which can prepare you for being president. But Kamala has had much more success. Trump has had bankruptcies and numerous lawsuits. He fails a lot more than Kamala has. And she does seem to have the structures and the working experience and the plans in place. She's more of a sure bet, and I know I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I know people are going to vote for Trump, but that's fine. But do they, it's a bit more uncertain, isn't it? Do they understand? I mean, what am I trying to say?
What they don't understand is that this other candidate would actually get to the core and root of your problem.
Yes.
So even making housing more affordable, especially that's a big thing. She's saying in places like Phoenix and Denver, less than 1% of houses are affordable on a teacher's salary. That's insane. I mean, she's going to get to the core of the problem and make it better for everybody. Never mind.
You see, that's the thing with Trump saying he's not going to tax the tips and overtime. Actually, what those people don't realise, they'll vote for him because of that. They don't realise they're living in that predicament because of his government and the fact that all the big money, he's not taxing the billionaires. And because of that, these people are living on the breadline every day.
Yeah, because of that and a lot.
It's incredible when you think about, I'm sorry to talk about Trump because this is about Kamala, but actually their journeys to the White House, both of them, where Trump was taking government money to build his housing projects and then deny people to live in them, and actually being prosecuted for not letting black people live in his buildings. Actually, here was Kamala holding the banks and the institutions to account for the foreclosure crisis.
Yes.
And not backing down. There's such disparity there. And looking at it objectively, one person is so better suited to run the country.
I know. And hey, the chapter about security was really interesting because I thought
cybersecurity.
Yeah, wow. I thought it was all going to be about war.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, it was loads about cybersecurity and who's hacking into what, and that you have to get your cybersecurity up to scratch, otherwise you can totally be shut down from hackers. It's actually probably the most dangerous war now, is from within like that. And also climate change. And she's like, how can you not see that as a security problem? Because if there's drought, then you'll get famine, and famine will create a refugee crisis, then you'll have border instability. And actually, climate change is the biggest threat to your national security. It will cause chaos.
Well, it is causing chaos right now.
The CIA director is denying climate change. That's insane.
The world is insane, I have to say, and the people in power are insane. And if we can get the good people, but do you know what happens? It will be like where Obama will go in. If Kamala gets in, she'll probably get 2 terms, and then we'll get Republicans again who will unpick everything. It's just this cycle.
Yeah, and she'll have been as blocked as can be at every turn.
But do you know what? It would just give me peace of mind if we had somebody in power who appeared at least to care about, who had a history of helping society and nurturing and fostering people to be a better version of themselves,
Yeah, agreed.
So, look, we're completely run out of time because there's so much in this book. Is fascinating. I learned so much about America and politics. So it wasn't just a book about Kamala. In fact, where did she get to? We've got her as District Attorney of California, and then she actually ran for president herself, right?
Oh, she's the US Senate. She gets the senator position of California. And she's the senator of 39 million people in California. That's insane. That's half of Britain in one state. And then from the position of senator, you can sort of sign up to extra subjects that you can nip into, like she's the security. And she just works so hard. She's such a grafter. Oh, yeah, P.S. she got married to this bloke called Doug, who's an entertainment lawyer. 2014. He sounds like a nice fellow.
Oh, Doug.
We haven't mentioned Doug. Yeah, the first.
And he might be the first husband.
Yeah.
No, what do they call it? The first man. Hang on, it's called the first lady, right?
At the moment, because she's vice president, he's currently second gentleman.
Oh, okay, so he might be the first gentleman.
I don't know. But he's an entertainment lawyer, and he divorced a director or something, or some film producer or director, and they were long since divorced. She came in when the kids were quite young, and they all became friends. They cook at weekends and have nice times. She makes a big effort to be there, and the kids are a bit like her own now. There you go. That's a bit of biography for you.
Yeah, that's a boring side of her life.
Yeah, who cares? We need her to run the country, make it better.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, like reading this book, I would say there's few people who are more equipped to be president, and she's certainly the best possibility now.
And she's young enough to still be able to walk, you know what I mean, and breathe. That really helps.
And she's young enough to do 2 terms, actually. So
yeah, she really is. And you know what? She's got a lot of fight in her, that woman. Good on her.
Yeah, I look forward to her being the first lady president. Do you know what, as well? I don't like this whole gender argument. It's just she's just going to be a good president regardless of the fact that she's a woman.
She's just the right person for the job, full stop.
Period. But at the same time, I would say whatever your political persuasion, please don't allow the media and politicians to divide us as a society. We have to, our neighbours might vote for Trump. We can still be friends with them. Don't let them divide us,
Yeah, we should just not talk about it anymore to each other, because it's really difficult to remain friends when you don't agree with people.
No, I don't think it is. I think we have to try harder to be friends with people who think different politically. I think the only way we as society will overcome people like Donald Trump and the far right who survive on dividing us is we have to refuse to be divided. But I think with social media and mass media, I don't think it's possible because they pitch us against each other, and most people are willing to keep up the good fight. And whatever side they're on, people think they're on the side of the good fight.
That's true. Each person thinks they're right. Yeah.
Oh, we're all going to die.
I know. Right. Anyway, that's enough. After this conversation, no more politics.
No, let's do more. But let's read Margaret Thatcher next week.
Oh, Christ.
No, we need another Zsa Zsa Gabor, don't we?
Yeah. Let's do an appalling, shallow person.
They've got the same hair, by the way.
Who?
Margaret Thatcher and Zsa Zsa Gabor have the same hair.
Back to our level again.
Normal service will be resumed next week.
Yeah. Good. Goodbye.
Go and vote.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast, and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.